On today's show, the New York Mets signed Bo Bichette to a huge contract to play third base, and that means that Mark Vientos is now even more possibly on the trade market. Should the Padres be interested?
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network in the business for Monday, January 19th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for 6 years now, not just for this podcast, but various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Go check out FanDuel as well, today's sponsor, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost packs every NFL playoff game day. Hopefully playoffs went very well for the rest of y'all. Did not go right for me. And frankly, the universe, I would argue. Now that the Patriots have advanced. But on today's show, guys, we are talking about some of the latest news and updates with the Padres that we're going to get into, including Mark Vientos, the trade possibility. I think for him growing exponentially more interesting following the signing of Bo Bichette to the Mets. That should be a lot of fun. Talk about some of your questions, including questions on Nick Castellanos being an option for the Padres hunts to get a new DH, and also responding to Dodgers trolls and doing what we always do on this podcast. Remember to go leave a comment in the comment section. You could be featured in the mailbag and whenever I answer listener questions, which frankly is usually each episode during the week, right? We're doing 3 episodes a week now, but be sure to do that, and I'd love to answer them. But let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about some of the news. First thing, small little thing, Sung-Mun Song is expected to miss 4 weeks recovering from an oblique injury that he sustained during a recent batting practice session. That matches up with the start of San Diego spring camp. So it's not like he's expected to miss not much time. And frankly, it's not like he's expected to miss just any of spring training at all, which I do think will be important for him. I think it'll be important to just see how he meshes, how just the Padres seeing what they have. I think during spring training will be interesting because there's certainly going to be some position battles, I think, as we get across for the rest of spring training, whether it be Miranda, will he be someone that gets DH opportunities, whether it be guys in the rotation, all that sort of stuff. I think it's important, but nonetheless, not a major injury, so we're good there. Another small thing that I just wanted to talk about, there was a really nice piece of the Washington Post about Mike Schultz that was basically just talking about how he's back in the game, going to be doing some minor Orioles, prospect sort of farm system stuff. And it's cool. And I don't think that it was an insult at the Padres at all. It just sounds like he's a good baseball guy who really just wasn't suited for the full-time manager role, the full-time responsibility of all that, AJ Preller making all the big moves that he did. Maybe he was like, you know what, let me just chill, do a minor role where I could go and look at the upcoming talent of the future, right? So just want to throw that out there. Really cool piece. Recommend everyone checking it out. But now let's talk about Mark Vientos, right? So Mark Vientos is a guy that none of my listeners seem to like, which is understandable because, frankly, I get it. Listeners want a big change. They want someone who's going to really come in there and give the Padres the big B star that they deserve as a fan base. But I will say, sometimes people only have goldfish memory and they forget that Mark Vientos is a young player with a lot of potential and a lot of power who had a 132 WRC plus and 27 home runs in just 111 games in 2024. And this past year, he had 17 home runs, which is not amazing, right? Not amazing, but at least he did provide some power. And I think that he has some potential given the fact that he's still just 26 years old. So I think that he's still a possibility, but I think he becomes more of a possibility now. Why is that? Because Bo Bichette was signed on Friday, which I didn't talk about too much. I addressed it on the show. 3-year, $126 million deal. That's an AAV of $42 million, which is absolutely insane, by the way. And frankly, we're going to talk about this from a listener question. I think it was a listener question a little bit that was meant to be mean, but kind of interesting that we got on all these small contracts. Is it because of the lockout? I'm not totally sure. I'm not totally sure how that's going to affect things for some of these players. I really don't. And I'm not saying that as a diss or anything. I'm just totally not sure how this is going to affect things, given that it looks like we're basically guaranteed to head into a lockout after this season. It should be interesting. But he's going to be playing third base, Bo Bichette, for the New York Mets. And that makes them, by the way, a very fun lineup. I will say, I think that their lineup is fascinating. They have now completely reworked basically their entire infield, genuinely their entire thing. They brought in Marcus Semien. They brought in Jorge Polanco. They traded away Jeff McNeil. They traded away Brandon Nimmo. They've got Marcus Semien, who did I just miss? Jorge Polanco, Francisco Lindor, and now Bo Bichette as their infield. And I think that is just freaking fascinating, right? Like, I really do. I think that if you're a Mets fan, this is a very confusing offseason, but you cannot say it's not interesting. And with him playing third base, that makes Mark Vientos a lot more expendable, at least in theory, right? Because with Mark Vientos, he was their third baseman, right? And I think that with this new sort of lineup, I could see them going in a bunch of different directions. Maybe they want to go out and get someone else. Maybe it means Brett Baty is actually the guy who's probably on the move. Another player that I wouldn't mind if the Padres were to look into. Just buy low candidates, I think, are what's right for the Padres. It also could mean that Mark Vientos could be on the move, right? He's been a player that has been discussed a lot in trade discussions, and he's been discussed as far back as a month or so ago, right? Maybe a month and a half ago, when we heard that the Padres and Mets were apparently working on or talking about potentially being a good trade partnership, as reported by Ken Rosenthal and Dennis Lin and a couple others, right? That was what was reported. Maybe this means that Mark Vientos is more expendable. Me personally, I will say, if I were to give up someone, it'd probably be Baty, just because I think that you could find a player like Baty a little bit more easily. I don't mean that he's like terrible, but Brett Baty, Mark Vientos, one of those two guys is probably expendable. And if you're wondering, Brett Baty did have the better year last year. He had 18 home runs. He had 111 WRC plus. He might have even gotten unlucky in some ways. He really started to put things together, and he's just 26. So is there some sort of swap involving the Padres that could work, where they get a young guy who can play third base or DH? And I say play third base or DH because Manny Machado, given his age, given the fact that he might need some more days off, he might want to have some righty-lefty splits, maybe potentially, that could really, really be an interesting direction to go for the Padres. And considering that Baty is a lefty and Vientos is a righty, I think you'd probably want to go with Vientos between the two, only because given the fact that he's a righty, that makes more sense. The Padres right now don't really have that much flexibility when it comes to left-handed hitters and whatnot, right? Because Sheets, Song, Cronenworth, whoever they might want to have there at first base or DH is a lefty. So if you have someone like Vientos, who does well against lefties, by the way, he does slug. Even last year, he posted a 105 WRC plus and a 315 weighted on base against left-handed pitching, which is probably better than what the Padres have had usually against left-handed pitching over the past few years. So I definitely think that this makes it a more interesting possibility. I really, really do. I think that this is a player that I understand that you probably have to give up something, right? Maybe you have to give up Pivetta, maybe you have to give up Motorhorn, and you get Vientos and Jonathan and Senga, or some of the outfield prospect in return. But I do think that these are decent players to take a risk on, given the fact that the Padres really need some flexibility and just need some hope, some possibility, instead of hoping that older players are going to regain what they got when they were younger. Instead, you'd have a younger player hoping that they have some other gear to go to, right? And I think with Vientos and Baty, that could be possible. Absolutely possible. Although I do think that Vientos makes a little bit more sense for this lineup, given the fact that they need someone who could crush lefties and be more of a righty bat, perhaps in a platoon. But that's just me. It's something to think about. I understand that people don't love it. I understand that everybody hates me these days on this channel. But what can I say? Speaking truth to power is what I do. I'm kidding, of course. But we're not done, guys. Of course, we got to talk about Nick Castellanos. We got to talk about some of your questions and comments and a whole lot more. But first, let me take a second to talk to you about one of our favorite people, and that is FanDuel. The wild card round, the divisional round, they're both gone, but FanDuel is still going to be in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every playoff game day, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Multiple profit boosts you can apply to the best bets you like, more juice on the ones that you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. Every play feels bigger. Boosts make you feel that way too. It's great. Go check it out. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. FanDuel, we love you so much. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we're back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always. And thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And if you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. Access to an ad-free audio for Locked On Padres, compatible with all your podcast places, an invite to the members-only Discord where you can talk to me, send me personal messages, whatever it is, be first on the mailbag and all that sort of stuff. So go check it out. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/Everydayer Club. And then you sort it by baseball, you'll find it, right? Go join that. Go check that out. And there are other benefits as well. So Locked On Everydayer Club. Go check that out. Now, let's talk about some of your questions and comments, guys, because there were a bunch this week. Understandably, because Dodgers news happened. So that means we got to talk about it. But there was actually a really interesting one that I only became aware of because of one of you listener commenters, and that's from @DrizzleChips, who said, which amazing, what do you think of Bob Nightingale's Nick Castellanos to the Padres idea and the fit for the team as their DH outfield depth if the Phillies eat most of the remaining contract? Should we be aiming higher than that as a DH type, or is that our ceiling until the trade deadline? I think that there are some other options potentially for the Padres other than Nick Castellanos and just hoping that you can get anything out of him. Because frankly, Nick Castellanos, you could argue, is more meme than quality on-field player, right? He was negative 0.6 wins above replacement last year, just 0.2 the year before, then 1.3 the year before that, and then negative 0.2 his first year in Philadelphia. And his best season, some of his best stretches, right, with the Reds. And the Reds, by the way, have one of the most, arguably the most hitter-friendly ballparks in Major League Baseball. I understand he put up a 140 WRC+. He's hit 34 home runs before. He's hit 27, 23, 26. But that was still a while ago. I understand the idea, though, right? Because you would be able to get him to play outfield. That is a place he has some experience. But he's also quite horrid in the outfield, right? So unless you have some insurance for Ramon Laureano, right? Or Fernando Tatis Jr. or Jackson Merrill, of course, knock on wood, that nothing happens there. But I will say that it's not an option that should be dismissed. Maybe you could bring him in. Maybe if he focuses only on DH, he could be a little bit better, right? And maybe like a little bit of like the Gavin Sheets sort of scenario. But to me, I just see a guy who has been so dreadful for so long, right? That I just don't see it, right? I would love the idea of only putting him because he's really bad defensively, guys. You're not really going to get outfielder. It's like negative 11 defensive runs saved, negative 12 outs above average. That's some of the worst in all of Major League Baseball when it comes to defensive value, right? I don't care if he caught a couple nice fly balls in the playoffs that one year. He's a very bad defender. So you'd basically be batting him DH. And if, one of those guys needs a day off, especially one of the corner outfielders, then you could put in Castellanos. But overall, you really don't want to do that. Look, I could see it in a world where they pay for most of the salary and you barely have to give up anything. And you're like, cool, but there's not a lot of options out there. Maybe he can be a positive WRC plus guy if he only focuses on hitting, like I said, like Gavin Sheets. But I just don't really see it. I think you should be aiming a little bit higher. I know that I'm the buy low guy. I know I've been talking about bargain bin hunting, but I really don't see this. I just don't. I just don't see this for the Padres. I think that this is just not a possibility that makes all that much sense. I won't hate it, because at least it'd be something, but they need to pay for a lot of the salary. And in my opinion, when was the last time a team like really paid for the full salary just to get rid of a player? I just feel like that never tends to happen. And that usually means the player is so bad that a team's going to be like, well, we don't want him to, you know what I mean? Like, we're not going to give you anything for this guy. We'd rather you just buy him out and we sign him to a minor league deal, right? So I don't really see that. But again, he at least has been good before. And there's a world in which he just focuses on being a DH that he could provide some very cheap power for the Padres. Still at least had a 400 slug last year, 17 home runs, right? He's had decent slugging numbers even when in Philadelphia and even when he wasn't doing all that great. Maybe he could get better, but in Petco, I don't know, man. I don't know. But I appreciate the shout. Bob Nightingale, appreciate you as always for a bunch of reasons that aren't always complimentary. But moving on, though, to another question that we got @Ramamurdy9938 says, as someone who roots against the Chargers for banning San Diego for LA, I love seeing them lose to the Patriots. I totally understand that. Don't include the Patriots part. Boston sports are a scourge on this world. But he says, I would love to get Cody Bellinger to be first base or DH and anywhere in the outfield. I know it will cost us, but he could be worth it. Is this totally unrealistic? I think so, because I think that Bellinger has kind of proven that that weird stretch that he had with the Dodgers, right? Remember post MVP, post Rookie of the Year, all that stuff. He was just he had a -1 season. Like, it looks like he was just banged up and whatnot. He's had some really good seasons for a while now, right? Like with the Cubs, he had a 4.4 win season. Then in a really down year, he's still worth 2 wins above replacement because he's a solid defender. Then last year, 4.9. He's a solid hitter. He almost hit 30 home runs last year. I think he's going to get his big deal, right? And I just don't think that the Padres have enough for that. I think there's a world in which the Padres could have gotten him if this was back in 23 when he signed that kind of prove it year deal, the prove it deal with the Cubs, right? Or even before then, where you could have signed him for next to nothing. I think then you could have done something. I think the year after that, when the Cubs gave him all those options and all those sort of things where the deal wasn't out for him yet, you could have potentially done it there. But I think he's proven now that at the minimum, he's going to be a solid above WRC plus player. Maybe the power won't always be there, right? Because remember, in 2024, after that Cubs breakout, he didn't do all that much, right? Just 18 home runs, 108 WRC plus, but that's still okay because he's also a very good defender, right? I think he's going to get paid. I think he's going to get a decent amount of years, maybe not the $250 million deal or whatever that he wants, but I don't see him doing a prove it year type of deal. And that's what I think the Padres would need. And at first base DH, it doesn't make sense given that he's in the 93rd percentile among outfielders in terms of his range, in terms of his defensive versatility, especially at the corner spots, right? I'd love him to be the Padres left fielder, but they unfortunately do not have the funds for that right now, unless a shocker occurs and they're able to convince him on some prove it year, 1 year deal. You go out, get paid again, but he's kind of been proving it. He just proved it this past year that he's a good player. So I don't see it, but hey, I've been proven wrong before. Moving on though to another comment. Let's see here. This one was a little bit weird. At Johnny Ned E-Dog 5858 says, trying to keep the faith, but go to a rival game at Petco Park and likely it turns into Dodger Stadium South when they come into town. Where's the so-called diehard fans at? Literally fair weather fans, but I get it. Nobody wants to go watch their teams lose. Not a troll, just a realistic Padres fan. I don't really know where to start with this one. Because if I could just look up on YouTube highlights from Dodgers Padres games, are there Dodgers fans there? Of course. I mean, guys, it's the biggest team next to the Yankees in the sport. Right. And frankly, soon to be bigger than the Yankees with the way things are going with that team. But it's a big team. There's going to be Dodgers fans there probably. But I don't understand the idea that the team that had the second most attendance in baseball is all of a sudden fair weather just because the biggest team in the sport, when they come to town, maybe you have some Dodger fans there. But I'm like, I've seen them sell out games on a Tuesday night. So I don't understand this idea of fair weather. I think it's ridiculous. And frankly, I don't believe you. I think you are a Dodgers fan. This is a false flag operation. I guess for the listening comment section, I guess for this show. But again, appreciate you commenting so much. I think that the Padres, I don't understand the idea that they would be second in attendance, but then not show up for Dodgers Padres, that there's just a sea. It's like, no. As a fan of the Chargers, I know what it looks like when it's a sea of the other team. Trust me, this ain't that. Moving on, though, to another comment at Mr. Listen to Me Please says Kyle Tucker's baseball contract, $55 million a season divided by 550 at bats is approximately $100K an at bat. Major League Baseball is now primarily about big money, paying men guaranteed godlike contract salaries, which has caused the game to become quite vulgar to mainstream America, which lives paycheck to paycheck. Long lost are families and kids coming to the game for reasonably priced entrance fee to see players pay for a fair contract and for the love of the game. I refuse to attend MLB games. I won't support this fleecing. Are you an owner? At Mr. Listen to Me Please, are you an owner? Because that's how owners talk. I think that the idea, and I'm not going to get political on this show, although it is true that people are struggling mightily in the United States. And I don't think that's a very political thing to say. Hopefully, my bad. If so, that is true. Things have been tough, but I think the idea that people don't want to go to a game because they don't like that players, which are the reason they actually watch the game, are getting paid a lot of money, but then they don't care about the owners who don't play the game, aren't the reason you go to the game, and get paid more than every single player combined. More or less, right? Usually on their team. This sounds like bootlicking for ownership, and it sounds like your frustrations are not aimed in the right direction. But that could be me. And I do think that a better example of players and fans maybe not connecting when it comes to the money thing would probably be during the lockout when like the Blake Snell comment happens, when he was like, why am I going to only pay for $200K? I'm paraphrasing. That isn't a great comment. That type of stuff strikes people. And it's like, all right, dude, I know that you're not getting paid as much. We're hoping you get paid a lot, but don't say I'm only getting paid $250K a start, right? Like, that's like, you know what I mean? Like, and again, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I'm not trying to take a dump on Blake Snell. That's not what he meant. And I know what he meant. And I think most people know what he meant too. But yeah, this is just the weird comments I get on this channel sometimes. But they're not the only weird comments, folks. And they're also not the only comments. There's not only just weird ones. We also have some good faith ones as well that we got to answer. One of them being about Zac Gallen. Oh, yeah, because that would be fun. And just like that, we are back, everybody, on the Locked On Padres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are still going through some of your questions and comments because why not? It's what we do. Firstly, though, let's talk about Tatis being bad. Same commenter who left that comment says, Tatis' stat averages the past 3 years, from 2023 to 2025, average out to about 23.6 home runs, 66 RBIs, a 266 batting average, 24 stolen bases, a defense, and mediocre in the playoffs. If one just looks at the stats without a name associated, why would one call this an elite player? He also leaves a comment saying, just pay Arraez a fair contract. Play him at first base, bat him third. Arraez brings clutch hitting, very high average, is definitely acceptable on defense. I bring this up just to give you guys an idea of like someone who thinks Tatis is bad because he doesn't have RBIs or high batting average, and is mediocre in the playoffs, despite the fact that he was bad this past season in 25, and in 2024, he had the highest OPS in the history of the postseason. If anybody's wondering, like, about Luis Arraez, you know the phrase that's like, show me my enemies, or judge me by my enemies and by my friends? Judge the comment of someone wanting Arraez who thinks Tatis is bad, but Arraez is great. And no, empirically speaking, Arraez is horrific defensively. He's very, very bad. And that's part of the reason that no one likes playing him in the field. And that's why the Padres had him be the DH first baseman, because he hurts you defensively the least, according to people who know baseball the most, at first base versus any other position. So no, enough. But more comments about Tatis. At Eric Hancock 90210 says he's one of those. Is that a reference to the show? He's one of those guys now that are a good ball player with a problematic salary. Padres got a few of them. Here's what I'm going to say about that. I think that Tatis, the salary thing, we can start discussing Tatis and whether or not he's worth it later. But for now, right? Let's just look at for now. In 2025, his AAV was 20 million. Right? This next year, 20 million, then it's 25, 25, 36, 36. That's when it starts getting really rough. When he gets paid 36 million, that's when we have to start having questions. But if you look at last year, the wins above replacement leaders, which by the way, I like to cite, because for people who don't like WAR, I like to cite all the other players that are top in WAR that we all agree are great, like Cal Raleigh, like Aaron Judge, Shohei, Trey Turner, Corbin Carroll, Jose Ramirez, Lindor, and then Tatis. That's the group he's in with WAR, just to show you that WAR is a pretty good stat to use. In terms of the other guys around there, Julio Rodriguez, he had less wins above replacement than Fernando Tatis Jr. He got paid 17 million last year. 20 million for a 6-win player is about right. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's about right. I don't know how else to explain that. George Springer last year, right? What did he do? He was great. He had a 5.2 win season. He was an absolute beast in the outfield. He was great. He got paid 25 million last year, and he was worth less wins above replacement than Tatis, right? Like, I don't understand exactly what we're doing here. Juan Soto had less WAR last year, and he's getting paid 50 million, right? And for good reasons, because his downs are basically better than most players in the sport. That's basically why Juan Soto got paid that much, if you guys are wondering. Kyle Tucker has never had a season as good as Fernando Tatis Jr. seasons. He's getting paid now $57 million per year, at least for the next couple of years, but he can opt out, but you guys get my point, right? He might even just be a one-year player. We don't know exactly with him. So again, this idea that Tatis's contract is bad really needs to be dismissed immediately. There's a reason why teams would jump on the opportunity to trade for him if they had the chance. It would be the rich teams, don't get me wrong. But even still, if you look at all the other players in Tatis's salary range, he's actually providing more value than a lot of them. It doesn't mean they're bad. That doesn't mean those are bad contracts, but he's been great. So I don't understand where this is coming from. I really don't get it. I think it's ridiculous. Ketel Marte, you want to use him? 14 million. And how many wins above replacement did he have last year? 4.6. Year before that, 6.3. Tatis is getting paid about what a player of his value gets paid. It's not a bad contract. Now, when it gets to 39 million, if he's only a 4-win player, that would be bad, because then you're also like, well, we have this guy for years along. But for right now, no, it's just obscene. At L. Navales also says he was playing really well until he got beamed in his arm that popped a blood vessel. For those who don't remember, go look up the Pirates game when he got hit, and he led like the most swollen thing I've ever seen in my life. I bring this up because I hadn't brought that up for Tatis, that he got hit really badly in his elbow or around there in his elbow and was pretty bad after that. Sure, but we are really long past due. We are long past the point of expiration for using, maybe he was injured as the reason for why Tatis is not the same offensive player that he was his first few years in the league. I still think he could get there potentially, but for now, it's mostly just based on hope, right? Next comment, though, the Dodgers signing Kyle Tucker for $240 million for 4 years shows that baseball is broken and needs a salary cap. Every sport has a salary cap, but baseball refuses to be like the other sports. Also, I liked hiring Bud Black and Will Byers. My question, though, for Monday's show, what low-end deal would we have to offer Zac Gallen to get him to sign 1 year at $20 million with a second-year option? And also, is Miguel Andujar a possible player we could sign? And any update on Ryan Mountcastle? No update on Ryan Mountcastle from what I've seen. It really does sound like the Orioles might just want to trade him. I don't know, right? We're going to have to see, because then I Googled Ryan Mountcastle as of 10 minutes ago over the course of me recording this. Aggressive offseason makes Ryan Mountcastle a top trade candidate, right? They struck a deal with Ryan Helsley. They bought Zach Belflin. They signed Pete Alonso. Maybe they could still trade him, but again, there's no update on him as of what I'm reading right now. I think that it would be really fun to sign Ryan Mountcastle. I'd be super excited about it, to trade for him, I mean. But for now, no momentum on that side. But remember that the Padres and a lot of teams, there's plenty of teams that get guys that they're not rumored for, right? Or that they just procure, they appear out of nowhere. In terms of Zac Gallen, I think you could do that. And the reason I think you could get him on a short deal is because he was bad last year. And I do think that teams aren't super high on him right now. They're wondering, is this the real Gallen? Or is this the Gallen that we have going forward? I think he could get better, but at age 30, cake might be pretty much baked. He was a 4.83 ERA guy last year. He was down, right? Years before that, he was a solid pitcher, very solid pitcher. And I would love to have him as this team's 3 or 4. I think that'd be excellent. But it is possible that because of his down year, you could do a Pavetta-like deal maybe, where it's a little bit more prove it. Maybe his market isn't out there. I could see that. I really do think that would be a possibility, right? And the Padres have at least been linked to him a little bit, as mentioned in Dennis Lynn's articles. But what can I say? Moving on, though, at Garvinland has a big old beef with me. That's right. We're not ending a show without getting into the Dodgers fans. Of course we got to. Garvinland 9490 says, Dodgers fans and people that know ball told you they wouldn't sign Tucker to a $400 million 10-year deal, but rather a shorter-term deal with a high AAV. And that is exactly what happened. Locked On Padres video from 12/3/2025. I like that you cited my thing. The Dodgers reserved the longer-term 300-plus mega deals for superstars, Ohtani, Yoshi, Mookie, as I said. A similar deal for a non-superstar like Tucker would have qualified as somewhat reckless spending. That is what would have represented a shift in the Dodgers spending. That didn't happen, though. And admittedly, select few teams had 2.5 months to get a deal done with Tucker. His market somewhat collapsed in terms of overall year's dollars, and the Dodgers got him on their teams. But hey, bragging about a got you that didn't happen, calling out they're stupid for being right, and not even understanding the main point of contention still weeks later is certainly a way to go. I get it, though. Reading comprehension is hard, and bad faith responses are easy. Here was your comment. That you're referring to. The idea that the Dodgers hand out blank checks to the top free agents every offseason is a parroted surface level take. They didn't sign Soto, Judge, or Turner in 23, Seager in 22, Cole 20, Harper 19, or Hosmer. The only FAs they've signed at or above the money being speculated for Tucker are Ohtani, a unicorn, and Yoshi. They also acquired Mookie, but he was a trade and extension. Maybe they do spend big money on Tucker, but it would indeed be a shift in how they traditionally spend big money on free agents. That's just not true. And also, when you look at the history of the Dodgers, they also reportedly offered a big, a little bit maybe of a shorter deal, right, to Aaron Judge, who was the top free agent on the market that year. Right? Not to mention, this also does not include the fact that, yes, that deal for Betts, which you cited in your latest comment, interestingly, right? You mentioned, okay, they reserve the longer terms for superstars, Ohtani, Yoshi, Mookie. And then in this comment, you said, no, they only did it for Ohtani and Yoshi. So now you're adding Mookie to that, right? And that also doesn't include Trevor Bauer, who was the top starting pitcher free agent one offseason. Freddie Freeman, who, by the way, yes, is still a Dodger. I don't know why we're pretending he's not still a Dodger, my friend. But Freddie Freeman, what deal did they sign to him? They signed him to a 6-year, 162. You're wondering, well, that's not the 300 that I'm talking about. Bottom line, it was a long-term, huge contract for a superstar player that was worth it, and he's great, but that is a huge deal. Because also remember that first basemen just aren't getting paid that crazy amount of money, right? There's no other, he's the highest paid first baseman. At least I don't want to like fully commit to that. I don't know that for sure 100%, right? So yes, and my response to you was rather, I think the idea that me being an idiot saying that the Dodgers are up there and a possibility because for the past few years they've been signing the best free agents that are available, and you took issue with that and said they've only done it twice, which I rejected. I was like, no, Bauer was a big one, right? We have to remember Bauer. We have to remember Mookie Betts, which I count because do you do that trade if you can't extend him? I think is a big part of this, right? Other teams weren't going to do a 1-year rent necessarily of Mookie Betts, although that's fair. Then there's also Tanner Scott. There's also Blake Snell. There's also Tyler Glasnow. And there's also, like I said, Freddie Freeman. So that's why I said that. Again, you're moving goalposts, and I get it. Dodger fans are trying really hard to justify that what they're doing is interesting, or that what they're doing is a lot more skill than it is money. I think it's a little bit of both, but we're going to talk about this more on Wednesday. That's right. My buddy Peter Apple of Just Baseball is going to be on the episode for Wednesday's show talking about whether or not the Dodgers are bad for baseball, unpacking all of this. And again, my only thing is this. I cannot believe, I just want to wrap up this comment. I cannot believe that I got crap for saying that Kyle Tucker, top free agent for a team that has signed a lot of the top 5 free agents every single year since 2019, that he is on the short list for them. That is what I am getting crap for because, again, the Dodgers fans don't want to admit that money is a big part of what's going on right now. That's what it is, right? That's just a fact. I'm sorry. But we'll be talking about that more in my very dismissive and frankly kind of smug jerk way, which I will work on. My apologies on Wednesday's episode. We're also probably going to have Jake Garriani here on Friday's episode to talk about the biggest questions facing the Padres. And of course, whatever happens in terms of big signings and whatnot between now and then, expect that to be covered as well. Go check it out, guys. Go check it out. Thanks for tuning in to the Locked On Padres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. And remember to go check out the Everydayer Club. Get Locked On Padres ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to the link that I mentioned at the beginning of this pod. Just look up Locked On Everydayer Club. You'll find it on the Locked On Podcast website. They'll have the links. Find that and get in there. Going to start answering your guys' questions and just interacting with you guys in there because I think that would be a lot of fun. And there's also other bonus benefits. So go check that out. But until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My faithful homies, take care.